Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jeevanam Kavibhiriritam Kalmashapaham Sravanamangalam Srimadatam Bhuvi Grananti Ye Bhurida Jana. So in the last class, we were discussing that portion of the Shrimad Bhagavatam where it has been described that how Vyasa, for the need of preaching Bhagavatam to the humankind, had to bring down his son, Shukadeva, from Samadhi, from Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and had to teach him, had to instruct him in the Bhagavatam, in the Pura Mahapurana Bhagavatam. And then it was ordained to him to preach the philosophy of the Srimad Bhagavatam to the humankind. And we saw that it was not an easy task, that he was in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the one who was absolutely detached from the world, from the very inception, from his very birth. We have found that he left his home from the moment he took his birth. And Vyasa's attempt to bring him back was futile, and he realized that it is actually of no use because he has no sense of attachment to the worldly ways of living. And that detachment is not because of simply a dried heart. It is actually the heart which is the fertile ground of devotion. So as he is totally immersed in the devotion of the divine, so that entails the detachment from the world. So as Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that the more you go towards the east, the west automatically falls behind. The renunciation is something spontaneous. It cannot be forced. His love for the contemplation of his real nature was so intense from the very birth that spontaneously the attachment for the world fell off. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that the scab on the wound, if you forcefully try to remove it, the scar, the injury lacerates, it will not heal. But if you allow the scab to fall off automatically, that speaks of the healing. So the real healing happens when the scab falls off automatically. The renunciation is something like that. When the renunciation in our life comes because of our attachment to the divine, all the attachment falls off spontaneously, just the way the scab falls off when the wound is healed. When the wound of worldliness is healed, the scab in the form of detachment falls off. So that's the state in which we found Shukadeva. But now Vyasa found that he is going to preach the Bhagavatam to humankind. And that way he is going to introduce bhakti as a yoga, as a way of spiritual practice. In the age of the Vedas, we found that it's only the karma kanda. Those who were extremely attached to the world, they resorted to the karma kanda, lot of yajnas and rites, and That's how they used to pass their life, with the aim, with the resolution that all those rituals, all those sacrifices will enable him to attain the Swargaloka after his death. And even in this life, all those rituals will enable him to bind him, to integrate him to certain way of living. Because the mind by itself cannot remain in one place. Either it goes down or it has to be forced up. If we don't have something sublime to hold on, mind will naturally flow down, just like water. The water's natural tendency is to flow down. We have to pump it up. It cannot just stay in one place. Similarly, the mind's natural tendency is to flow down. So all those elaborate rituals had a purpose that helped the humankind to hold on to something so that they never go down to some grosser level of living, that enabled them to enjoy the sublime way of living through the regimentation of the mind. So that had some implications in this life and, of course, in the afterlife. That regimentation of the mind, you may say how the sacrifice leads to the higher plane of living. As such, the sacrifice by itself is like a programming. Just the way the programming language has no meaning for me. Why I give it importance? Because it helps me to get some end result through that software which has been developed. I get that end result. The sacrifices were like a software that helped us to regiment our mind, that helps us to keep our mind in some high sublime level, and that becomes your habitual state of existence. The rituals as such has no meaning. It has trained your mind to remain in a sublime level. It has regimented your mind so that it doesn't go down. And it is all the gross tendencies which brings us back again and again to this physical plane. Our hunger, our thirst, our need to procreate, these are the things for which I need a body. And that brings us down. If I can keep my mind always in some sublime level, I can deal in the mental level more and more. I need not have to come down to the physical level. I have trained myself in such a way that I've trained myself in such a way that I can continue in that sublime level of living more and more. And this physical existence as such has no hold on me. So that becomes the natural state of existence even after death. And that has been spoken of in the Yoga Shastra as a state of videha, that the bodily needs has fallen off. Even in this life, we will find those who have developed a taste for some sublime, this kala, all those your liking for the musical instrument or for some painting, all these things, if you have developed a liking, you will find you can spend more and more time in that. You forget your hunger, you forget your thirst, you enter into a flow, and you can live and just maintain that sublimity in that level for hours together. That speaks of videha. You forget your body. The same thing happened with those who were performing the rituals. That was a type of karma kanda. It had some implication in this life. It integrated. Dharma means dharayat iti dharma, that enabled them to hold on to something so that they did not disintegrate. And at the same time, it enabled them to transcend to some higher plane of existence after death. So that was the karma kanda. And those who were extremely detached, for them was the jnana marga. They constantly contemplated on the divine nature, negating all the projections from the mind to the entire physical existence. Everything they negated, knowing it for certain that it is a mere projection of the conscious principle. Just the way I see a huge reservoir when I'm passing through the desert. That's the first sloka of the Bhagavatam. In that itself, that simile was given, that the world is like the huge mirage, which is a mere projection of the desert. The desert is appearing as the reservoir. It's not there at all. So the Jnani knows it for certain. This entire world, just like the mirage, is something illusory. It has no substance as such. So they renounce it and they resort to the life of jnana, constant contemplation. Now the question is, what about the general humankind who have developed certain detachment from the worldly way of living? At the same time, they are yet to develop the tremendous detachment. For them, there was no way. Vyasa, we find that for the first time, out of compassion, is this enunciating, is introducing the bhakti through the scripture, the Bhagavatam, to the humankind. So it was a very challenging task. Why should the human accept it? It's something new. Why should they accept it? So he needed some role model for it. If a jnani like Shukadeva can be brought down, and if he preaches, it will become easy to preach bhakti to the world. Because all revered Shukadeva for his renunciation, for his extreme detachment, for his constant absorption in samadhi. He was highly revered. So if such a person comes down from samadhi and preaches the bhakti, then the bhakti marga can be easily preached to the humankind, which is essential, which is needed. So the need was there to bring down Shukadeva. And how can it be done? Just the way we use to bring our mind up. The same procedure is used to bring the mind down for the one who is established in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. As in the last class we were discussing, the name of the Lord, that it is a ekavritti, ishtavritti. We are those who have been initiated in the spiritual practice. We know that we are supposed to repeat that mantra again and again. That's japam. It leads to a type of meditation. How? That this one vritti stops all other vrittis. How it happens? The very basic science behind it is the mind is constantly jumping from thought to thought. We all know that. But at a time, it can never have more than one thought. It constantly jumps from thought to thought. But at a time, it can never have more than one thought. So if I can keep my mind in that one thought, there is no chance for the other thoughts to come. We will find in the life of Swami Yogananda as a young boy, when he asked Ramakrishna how to control the mind, he thought Ramakrishna will instruct him in some mudras, in some asanas, in some pranayamas, in some yogic practices. He never went that way. What he did, he told, just take the name of the Lord. That itself will do. Yogananda thought Ramakrishna doesn't know such any process. But again, he had some faith on him. He told, why not we try? Why not I try what he has told? And he found a wonderful result. The simple thing, when you are trying to keep your mind in one thought, as the mind cannot have more than one thought at a time, it never does multitasking. Mind can never do. When we say we are doing multitasking, actually mind is jumping from one task to other at a very fast pace, but it can never do multitasking. So if I can keep the mind in one thought, the other thoughts are bound to fall off. That's Ramakrishna's simple way is to say that in a tree where a lot of birds are sitting on the branches of the tree, those birds represent all the sinful thoughts. So if you have ever seen that there's a lot of birds sitting on a tree, you just have to stand beneath the tree and clap your hands. And you will find all the birds fly off. Ramakrishna, in a very simple word, is to say that if your mind is just like the tree where all those evil thoughts are like those birds sitting there, just clap your hands, taking the name of the Lord. They will fly off. In simple words, he's speaking that biggest philosophy, and that's the way we try to control our mind. But it's a assiduous process. It doesn't happen in one day, because the mind's general tendency is to break off into thousands of those distractive thoughts. By gradual practice, when I can keep it in one thought, when it becomes the habitual state of my mind, then another wonderful thing happens. If you can really do that, the mind cannot stay in one thought if it is very intense. Why? The nature of the mind is to jump from thought to thought. The mind, like any other element of this world, is a part of this samsara. The word samsara, this word called samsara, means samsarate iti samsara. Everything is flowing here. Nothing is constant. But why everything flows? Because there is a polarity. Water flows from higher level to lower level. If both the levels are same, the flow of water stops. Current flows when there is a difference in potential. If both the ends have same potential, no current. Magnetism, when there are two poles are there, North Pole, South Pole. If both are of the same polarity, there cannot be, both will be neutralizing each other. There cannot be any magnetic field. Similarly, the mind is mind when it is jumping from thought to thought. If by practice, if we can really keep it in one thought, and that thought is highly intense, the mind enters into that state of thoughtlessness. As it cannot jump from thought to thought, the polarity has been resolved. So now for a person who have become established in that habitual one thought, now and then they will be going to that state of thoughtlessness. And when they go to that state, they find that there is something which is beyond the mind. At present, like the Western philosophy, I think, therefore I am. The Descartes' famous quotation. We equate our identity with our mind. But the Vedanta says the moment you stop thinking, then you really know who you are. You go beyond the thought. And that's the state where you find that the mind is not there. The thoughts have stopped, but you are with your amness. The world is not there. You alone exist. You alone exist. And there is no locality of that existence. You have gone beyond time, space, causation. And that's the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. But it's interesting. At the very beginning, when you have started entering into that state, you cannot stay in that state for long. Why? Just the way when I started having that habitual one-pointedness, the mind again and again is to break into distraction. Similarly here, when the mind now and then enters into the thoughtlessness, it comes back again to the thought of that one thought. You may say, why? Because that's the habitual, that has become the habitual state of existence now. It cannot go down because mind has already been purified. It now stays in that Ishtavritti. It cannot go down. So therefore you will find in the life of Ramakrishna, in the life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we find that when they are in that state of intense samadhi, some mantra has to be pronounced, some mantra has to be repeated, and their mind comes down. Because the subconscious mind is having that ekavritti, that immediately that ekavritti, just there's a vyuthana that rise, that erupts, the mind again erupts into that single vritti and it comes down. So that's the way by which a person, an illumined soul who is established in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, he can be brought down by the thought of the divine. The thought of the divine, which helps us to elevate our mind, is the same thought which can force the mind, the so-called the thoughtlessness state of an illumined soul to be brought back to this phenomenal existence. But it won't go down to the gross level. It remains in that constant level of the thought of the divine. So that is the only way. That's why we find that Vyasadeva, that knowing very well that to bring down the mind, some divine name, some divine play has to be just repeated, where Shukadeva is immersed in samadhi. That famous sloka which we read, Atma Rama Chamunayo, Nirgrantha Upi Urukrame, Kurvanti Ahaituki Bhaktim, Itham Bhuta Guno Hari. That Atma Rama, that one who is constantly absorbed in his own self, whose arama is in Atma, whose happiness is in his own self, such Muni, Nirgrantha, whose all attachments has fallen off. So even such a person, Urukrama, Urukrama is the Lord Krishna, even such a person has an unconditional love for the Lord. Urukrame kurvanti ahaitukim bhaktim. Such is the benevolent power of the name of the Lord. Itham bhuta guno hari. Sri Ramakrishna used to give another wonderful example. When a hemp smoker sees another hemp smoker, he gets extremely elated. They will go and hug each other. So the one who has went to that state of realization, he is extremely alone. There is no one to whom he can relate his experience. If he finds someone, you will find he is extremely elated. Yes, here is someone whom I can relate my experience. Unless we have the same fund of experience, we can never relate to each other. Language falls short. Language is just a process of encoding our experiences. And we encode our experiences through the language, which can be decoded only by those who have the same experiences. No one can decode it. If I have tasted mango, when I say it is sweet, it has a nice flavor, only the one who has tasted the mango can understand my words in its real way. The one who have never tasted the mango, however you may try, can you explain him the taste of mango? No. It can be only decoded. That language can be decoded only those who have the same fund of experience. And the one who is established in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, he is such a rare soul. He doesn't find anyone to whom he can relate his experience. And when he finds, it's a tremendous elation. He finds someone to whom he can relate his experience. He comes down. And that's why when this divine play is related to him, he can immediately relate to it. It's speaking of something with which he can relate. And that again brings him down. So Vyasadeva taught some of the woodcutters a mantra, a sloka, which depicts the childhood scene of the life of Krishna. So what is that sloka? That actually has been enunciated in the 10th skandha, in the 10th part of the Bhagavatam. That's the sloka which Vyasa taught the woodcutters to go deep into the forest and just they should chant that sloka. Where is Shukadeva? No one knows. But hearing that, he is bound to come down from Samadhi. And he will be eager to know who has composed that sloka. And the woodcutters were instructed, never mention my name. The moment he hears the father's name, he will never come. The woodcutters has to say, would you like to meet that person? If they say yes, bring him, just bring him to me. So that was the trick which was played by Vyasadeva. And what's that sloka? That's a wonderful sloka. Let us just read it. It's a very nice sloka. We will again get chance later on also to describe that sloka. It speaks of the child Krishna returning to Vrindavan. Throughout the day, he, along with the cowherd boys, was spending time along with the other cowherd boys in the forest. They took the cows for the grazing. Now they're returning. It is a dusk. They're all returning. The cowherd boys are returning. Krishna, along with the Krishna, all the cowherd boys are returning to Vrindavan. It is that sin which is being depicted in that sloka. What's that sloka? Varhapiram. Let me first read the sloka, then we will go to the meaning of the words. These words are very beautiful. The Sanskrit of Bhagavatam is extremely sweet. Varhapiram natavaravapu karnayo karnikaram vibhradvasa kanaka kapisham vaijayantim chamalam Randhran Vainayor Adhar Sudhaya Purayan Gopa Vrindai. Vrindavanyam Swapada Ramanam Pravishat Giti Kirtai. Giti Kirtihi. What it means? Varha Piram. Varha Piram means the plume of the feather cock. The feather of the peacock, the plume of the peacock feather. So that's his headdress. He has the peacock's feather is his headdress. That is Varha Piram. Natavara Vapu. His body is just like a dancer. A dancer is supposed to be very trim, slim, very fit body. So his body is just like a Natavara, an expert dancer. Means he's extremely handsome. Karnayo Karnikaram. In this, if you know the Sanskrit grammar, you will find it's very beautiful. In 2 years, you cannot have one ring. They are saying Karnayo, in 2 years, there is only one ring. So he's a small child. What he's doing with some forest flower, he has made some earring. Some forest flowers are there, which has a curvature. So if you join them one after the other, they will form a circle. And that something like a earring, he has put in one ring. It is not as an ornament. It is not for decoration. It is just a childish prank, childish play. He is opening that ring from one ear, putting it on the other, again opening, putting it on the other. So it's a game he's going on. Karnayo Karnikaram. In 2 years, only one ring. Vibhradvasa. His dress is yellow, of yellow color. Kanaka Kapisham. That yellow color is having a golden radiance. Kanaka Kapisham. Vaijayantim Chamala. With the forest flowers, all the other cowherd boys has made a garland and has put on him. He's just looking extremely beautiful with that garland of forest flowers. Randhran Venayor Adhara Sudhaya Purayan Gopa Vrindai. So Purayan. So he's playing the flute. Randhran with the the embroice of his lips. Veno Adhara Sudhaya. With the embroice of his lips, he's filling up the flute. Means he's playing the flute. The wonderful music is coming out of the flute. And Gopa Vrindai Vrindavanyam Sapadaramanam. So along with the other cowherd boys who are singing his praise, they're all returning back along with the cows to Vrindavan, making the ground of Vrindavan holy, pure, with the dust of his feet. So that's the sloka. Just when he was reciting what Vyasa planned, that's what happened. Now, from the inner part, from some cave, which was not known, if he was hidden there, hearing that, he came up from Samadhi to ask who has composed this song. So this sloka has these words. These words are very important. Varha Piram, the plume of the peacock feather. It actually speaks of that he has subjugated the Prakriti. That's the sign. He has conquered the Prakriti. The Varha Piram, the plume of the feather cock is on his head. Natavara Vapu, Karnayo Karnikaram, that speaks of the childishness, that he is not, the Lord is in no way attached to any of the gunas. He transcends all the three gunas, Sattva, Raja, Tama. So that's why he's just like a Valaka. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Ishwar Balak Bhat. Kono guner bosh noy. He's beyond all the three gunas. And that's been spoken of with a childish nature. He's beyond all the gunas. And that yellow cloth is something very important. You know, the complexion of Radha is the one who is the epitome of devotion. So the one who is devoted to Krishna, her complexion is that brilliant yellowish. The brilliance of the golden brilliance is there in that yellow tinge, in that golden radiance. That's the complexion of Radha. And the complexion of Krishna is dark blue. And you will find that in all the pictures, Radha is wearing dark blue sari, and Krishna's dress is golden yellow. Means God is tinged with the love of the devotee. It's not only that the devotee is tinged by the love of God, even the Lord gets tinged by the love of the devotee. So that's why his dress is yet brilliant yellow, Kanaka Kapisham. He's tinged with the love of the devotee. And Vaijayantim Chamalam, that he is having that garland made of the forest flowers. The entire creation is his garland, is like the garland hanging around his neck. Randhran Venayo Adhara Sudhaya Purayan Gopavrindai. That flute is something wonderful. Once there's a nice episode, once Radha asked Krishna that, see, your flute is so, this flute is a very fortunate thing. It's very fortunate for the flute to be always with you. We sometime can be in your company, but the flute is always with you. You're always tagged that flute just in your belt. It is always there with you. Either you're playing or it is tagged. Then Krishna saw that showed the flute to Radha and asked, what is there inside? Nothing. It's just hollow. And then Krishna told, that's the thing. If when you become like that, when we all become like that flute, totally hollow, means totally empty of our ego, then the Lord will play the music out of your life. That's the thing which the flute actually represents. That we have to be as hollow as the flute. All the ego has to be washed off. All the impurities has to be washed off, so that our personality becomes like that flute. And then the divine music will be played through your life. So that's the thing the flute represents. That's the thing which Krishna is always having. And all the gopas, they are just chanting the praise of Krishna. And they have just, there's a tremendous dust which has been raised, and they're returning to Vrindavana. So this sublime sloka brought Shukadeva down from his samadhi, and he was taken to Vyasa. And that's how we find that the plan worked. Now Shukadeva came back not for the attraction of his father, but because he was attracted by the glories of Krishna. He came back and studied the Bhagavatam. And we find that Shukadeva, after studying the Bhagavatam, he used to be immersed in all these episodes of the Bhagavatam, and he used to roam about. He was a Paramahansa. He roamed about naked. He never used to stay, even for a while. For bhiksha, he will go to some home, and just the time needed for getting the bhiksha, that much. He had no attachment. He used to roam about. And that's Shukadeva, chanting the name of the Lord, was roaming about when he came to King Parikshit, who was in Prayopavesana, was fasting unto death. That as per something, we will study it later, we need not discuss it now, that as per some act which enraged one of the sons of a rishi, he was cursed that within 7 days, he is going to die, being bitten by a venomous snake. So instead of panicking, instead of being afraid, he immediately thought that how blessed I am, that this death which is inevitable, about that I am getting time for 7 days. There is no question of panicking. So he thought, what's the best way? So he immediately just resorted to the bank of the Ganges, and he called all the monks. So all the monks were surrounding him. He was sitting there, and he was asking the monks that what's the way, just in 7 days, I can get liberation. If I'm having just the 7 days. If we could also have thought that way, we take as if, while I am going to stay for long, but we don't know for whom, when the life is going to be over. There's as Swami Vivekananda used to say very nicely, that the only predictable thing in this life, in this unpredictable life, is death. It is there waiting for us today or tomorrow. So it's like Shukadeva, if we could have also taken that fact to be so serious and would have asked that what's the way out. And for that, all the monks have assembled. And it is because of the tremendous urge of Parikshit to know that the way out, because he has a very short time, he finds Shukadeva coming there. And Shukadeva was requested, the one who never stays in one place, he was requested. He was asked this question, that what's the way out? And it is this 7 days in which Shukadeva narrated the entire Bhagavatam. Just listening to it, Parikshit got liberation. But we also hear, does that liberation happens to us? That's the thing, that urge is required. It is not the hearing of the Bhagavatam. The tremendous urge which the Parikshit had, do we have that? And do we have the ear of hearing? That's the thing. When you have the urge, the same word can have various layers of understanding. That's why these books are called Purana. Pura api navaiva. They never get old. The more you get seasoned, the more new level of understanding comes from the same words. They're not like novels that you once read, it is over. So Parikshit was ready for that. He had that tremendous urge. He had developed that capacity to listen it once and go to that liberation. So this book is of that importance. Shukadeva taught this to Parikshit. And very interesting, apart from Parikshit, there was no householder. It was only the assembly of monks. So Bhagavatam, which has at present become a scripture of all, initially was a scripture meant only for the Paramahansas, the monks. That's why it is, you will find at the end of each chapter, they say that this Paramahamsa Samhita, that the first chapter of Paramahamsa Samhita thus ends. Every chapter ends with that. So why this is called Paramahamsa Samhita? Because it was first pronounced in front of this assembly of monks. So that's how Bhagavatam started to be preached. It was in the initial stages only the scripture available to the monks at the beginning. But with the passage of time, it was the intention of the Lord that this scripture should be meant for all. Now, how it became for all? So that's the thing we will now try to just enunciate as has been indicated in the Bhagavatam. So at the very beginning of the Kali Yuga. So we find that this is the Yuga where the human being's general trend is to be immersed in worldliness. The thought of Lord doesn't arise. Most of us are immersed in worldliness. So one sage, Shaunaka, finding the general trend of the humankind in Kali Yuga to be always absorbed in worldliness, he prayed earnestly to Brahma that I want somehow to get rid of the influence of Kali. What's the way out? And he was instructed by Brahma, he was directed by Brahma to go to Naimisharanya. So this Naimisharanya is also called Animesha Kshetra, means where Animesha, where the Lord never takes away his eyes from. It's always being sanctified by the blessings of the Lord. So you go there. And Shaunaka went there, he started performing sacrifice, and many monks assembled when he started this sacrifice. And here again we find when Shaunaka is performing the sacrifice, another Sutta. This Sutta, as we have mentioned, they all belong to the Shudra caste. But in those days, that how religion was meant for all. It is the Suttas who used to memorize the entire Puranas. This Ugra Sravasa, this name means the one who is always eager to hear the glory of the Lord. Ugra Sravasa. Sravasa is the hearing. Ugra means one is eager. So he actually has attended, he was one of the monks who attended the assembly of monks at the time of Parikshit's Prayapaveshana. So he has heard from Shukadeva the entire Bhagavatam. And they were all this, what is called that Srutidhar. Once they hear, the entire thing they could memorize. And he memorized the entire Bhagavatam, and he was himself so absorbed by all the episodes of Bhagavatam. That's what he used to constantly chant. After hearing, he used to chant, and that used to give him tremendous devotion, and he used to move around. See, Naimisharanya, when Shaunaka was performing the sacrifices, there we find Ugra Sravasa by chance have arrived. And he was in ecstasy. He was just moving around. And seeing him all, he was a very reputed Suta. He was well known for his tremendous memory, not only that, and his devotion. He has memorized all the Puranas and the Itihasas. So all the Shaunaka, along with the other monks, approached him and requested him to come to the hermitage of Shaunaka, where the sacrifice was going on. That's how Ugrasravasa is brought to that sacrifice of Shaunaka. And there they all request him. What's the request? That's being spoken of in the next sloka, which we are going to study. Is the 6th sloka of the first chapter of the first part of Bhagavatam. Tvaya khalu puranani sa itihasani cha anagha akhyatani api adhitani dharma shastrani yani uta. So what is anagha? Oh, the spotless one, the stainless one. You have studied all the Puranas. Tvaya khalu puranani sa itihasani. All the itihasas you have studied. And not only that, after studying, you have memorized them and you go on chanting it. Akhyatani api adhitani. So you have studied and then you are describing it. You're chanting it to all the Dharma Shastras. You have studied. So the next question that will be asked is that what is that by which we can easily, means we always go for some comprehensive study, some short notebook. Is there some short notebook like something by which we need not have to go through that elaborate study, but we get the result out of it? That's the question which has been asked. In the 9th sloka, they ask, Tatra tatra anjasa ayushman bhavata yat vinishchitam pumsam ekanta sreya tat na samshitum arasi. Ayushman, O long-lived one, of the vast knowledge that you have already, adhitam, you have studied, then easily, what's just say us, just speak to us about that which can be understood very easily. Explain, samsitum, arhasi, tell to us that can be understood easily. That anjasha means easily it can be understood. What you have and what you ascertain, vinishchitam, what you ascertain to be absolute and ultimate good for the people in general. Pumsam ekanta sreya, that which is beneficial, that which is the best for human, please, out of certitude, tell it to us. So this is something wonderful, that we don't want to know the entire thing. Just tell us the essence of what all you have studied. So he has studied the Purana, and he has studied the Itihasa. This actually, the essence of Purana and Itihasa lies in the word itself. What does Purana means? Pura api navaiva. That there is some essential value. Essence, in essence, there is some value, some perineum wisdom is there. All the stories goes on changing. All the characters goes on changing. In Purana, you're studying so many sequence of events. The characters are changing, the stories are changing. But there is some perennial value around which all those characters revolve. So that's why Pura api navaiva, it's never old. Itihasa means iti ha asa. That's as it was, as it is, as it will be. Again, the same meaning. All the characters are changing, events are changing, circumstances are changing. But when you're studying, there is something that was, that is, that will be. That's the real itihasa. There is some essential value. So I don't want to just memorize all those circumstances, all those characters which has gone through the circumstances. I just want to know the essence out of it. That's what the sages asked Ugrasravasa. So who is the master of Itihasa and Purana. And he is also established in Dharma. So this slokas speaks a lot that first you have to study that Sravana and then Kirtana. And that has to be done by one who is already established in Dharma. Then only the real religion is transmitted. As Swami Vivekananda used to say, only a lamp can light another lamp. Sometimes by reading by ourselves, we think that we can imbibe spirituality. But spirituality can never be imbibed just that way. It can be an academic knowledge, but it has to be transmitted by a soul who is living that religion. So that's the thing which is being spoken of in this sloka, that he has been established in that religion. He has not only heard, he has established, and after that he is doing that kirtana. And that's why the Shaunaka and others saints, other monks approaches him who is established in what he's preaching. So religion is not like studying physics and chemistry. It's not academic knowledge. I still remember in my college days, one of my professor, he used to be totally drunk, but was a wonderful professor. One day it so happened, the classroom in which we used to have our class for certain reason had to be vacated. We had to sit in the next classroom. And our professor came, as usual, as he was totally drunk, he entered into the classroom in which we usually used to sit. And he never even looked whether the classroom has students or not. He started taking the roll call. We had to go and bring him. Someone has to go and bring him. And once he's in his table, in his chair, in his blackboard, wonderful lecture he's giving. And it's really something beneficial for us. Yes, in physics, chemistry, that is possible. But you can never think in teaching Bhagavatam, you cannot accept such a person. So it's after Sravana Kirtana that one should be established in the Dharma. That's why these three things has been indicated. Sravana, Kirtana, and one who is established in Dharma. To him only the monks are all approaching, so that the real spirit of the Bhagavatam, of the scripture, can be imbibed. So now we will find that Shaunaka somehow had the idea. He knew that Ugrasravasa was in the assembly of monks where Raja Parikshit, King Parikshit, had taken the resolution of Prayopaveshana, that fast until death. He won't take any food for that 7 days and resort to this study of the Bhagavatam, listening to the Bhagavatam till the last, his end comes. So there he was there, and he has listened the entire Bhagavatam, he has memorized, and that's his preaching. Now these monks knew it very well. So now they asked, after asking what's the essence, they somehow had the idea that the Bhagavatam speaks of the essence because it speaks of the divine play. The Lord around whom all the scriptures are actually speaks of that Lord only. His life is depicted in the Bhagavatam. So now they ask indirectly to him that can you speak of his life? That's the thing in the 12th sloka we find in the first chapter of the first part of Bhagavatam. They're requesting the sutta, our Ugrasravasa. Can you describe the personality of the Godhead who has appeared in the womb of Devaki as the son of Vasudeva? Suta janasi bhadram te Bhagavan satvatam patihi devakyam vasudevasya jata yasya chikirshaya. So here we find the word Bhagavan that in this sloka, that Krishna as being designated as Bhagavan. So who is Bhagavan? The word Bhagavan means Bhaga plus Vana. Vana means one who has the Bhaga. Bhaga speaks of 6 characteristics. The one who has these 6 characteristics is Bhagavan. So what are the 6 characteristics? Aishwarya, Dharma, Yasha, Sharisraya, Jnana, Vairagya. In Vishnu Purana, there is a sloka. Aishwaryasya samagrasya dharmasya yashaha sarisrayaha jnana vairagyayo chaiva sannam bhaga itirana. So what are these bhagas? These 6 characteristics. Aishwarya, wealth. Now whose is wealth? The entire creation is the Lord's projection. So ultimately everything belongs to him. So all the wealth is his, Aishwarya. Dharma. When the Lord appears as the universe, it always, the absolute reality appears as Shakti, as energy. The entire world is nothing but an expression of energy. And that energy again follows certain laws, the rhythm. And we all are bound by that laws. So all the laws, not only the physical laws, just the way I cannot transcend the law of gravitation, transgress it. If I say I don't believe in gravitation, I won't fly. When I was in Sydney, it happened that one taking some synthetic drug was from the 20-story building. His father and mother both were there. They were trying to desist him, but he was sufficiently strong. He somehow managed to get rid of their hold and jumped out of a 20-story building. He somehow, after taking the drug, had the feeling he can fly. But that was a tragedy. It crushed and died. So just by thinking that there is nothing called gravity, you are not going to fly. Laws, physical laws are there. Similarly, the moral laws. Nowadays, we think they are all man-made. The church is there to fool the people with all those so-called moral laws. We can transgress. We forget that our civilization, with all those so-called dictums of the church doesn't mean only the Christian church, any church, where very nicely they were living for 50,000, 60,000. Just go to the Aboriginal culture. 60,000, 70,000, that culture which we think of something rudimentary, with all those beliefs. They were quite happily, nicely living for 50, 60,000 years. And just we told them, we thought all those things which they believed is nonsense. And with all our justifications, we have just simply thrown them out. And in 200 years, we are in the moment of annihilation. After just saying that, in 200 years. So again, just by saying that gravitation is not there, the way you cannot get, because just you're not going to fly, you are just going to fall. So here also the same thing. You cannot break the moral laws. All those traditions for 50,000, 60,000, 100,000 years, they were living with all those things. And now we told they are all nonsense. At last we find it is we who are crushing. So now you will understand all the dharma belongs. It is there. The Lord, when he projected the universe, he projected along with that rhythm. So all the dharma is his. Aishwarya is his. Yasha, glory. We all want to attain glory. Why, you know? Something within us is constantly saying you are not limited. You are unlimited. Who is saying that? The Lord who is sitting within my heart. He is real. He is the real unlimited. He is the unlimited one whose echo is being reverberating in this body mind. And I think this body mind is unlimited. It's never possible. It's just the echo. Echo of what? Of the Lord. And that echo is constantly forcing us to go beyond all the limitations. And that's how we are trying to have more and more glory. But ultimately, whose is the glory? From where that constantly that echo is coming? You are unlimited. So he is the one who is having that all the glory. He's having all the splendor. From where you get the splendor? When a gold is hidden, you don't see its splendor. If it is covered by mud, you don't see its splendor. You wash it, its brightness comes out. The more our spiritual dimension gets manifested, the more the splendor is. That's been spoken of as Vibhuti in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. That all the things where we find that the layer of ignorance has fallen off, the things, the divine essence is manifesting more, the divine's manifestation is palpably seen in those things. So the splendor speaks of the removal of all the ignorance, in whom there is no ignorance at all, who is always shining forth with entire brilliance, the Lord. So he is the one who is having all the Sarisraya, the one from whom the entire creation has came. He only knows, the ultimate cause only knows the details of creation. So that's why he is omniscient. All the jnana belongs to him. And at the same time, vairagya. It is he who knows everything is a mere projection out of him. As a result, there is no question of attachment. Just the way the huge reservoir you see when you are passing through the desert, that huge reservoir doesn't have the capacity even to drench a single sand particle, because it's just a mere projection. The Lord knows that into this entire projection, whatever may be happening, nothing affects him. Entire thing has been projected from him, but nothing can affect him. He is permeating the entire creation, but at the same time, he transcends it. So now we will understand this, all these 6 bhagas in a limited way, maybe in us, but that finds the ultimate expression in the Lord. So that's why he's the Bhagavan. And his glory, when he comes down as a human being, the way he leads the life, that's by holding onto that, we can rise up. Lord comes down so that holding onto him, we can rise up. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, a very nice example. Suppose you have fell into a river and you are about to be drowned, and someone out of compassion throws a chain, and holding onto the rungs of each and every rung of the chain, at last you come out of the water. So we are immersed in this worldliness. The divine play, the Bhagavatam, is like the chain, holding onto the plays of the divine, that life, like holding onto the rungs. We can come up. The Lord comes down, Avatarana, he comes down, so that holding onto him, we can come up. And that's why they are eager to hear from Ugrasravasa the life of Krishna. So that's been again, they're continuing. That's the Shaunaka. What's their request? Tat na susrunanam susrushananam arhasi anga anuvarnitum yasya avatara bhutanam kshemasya cha bhavasya cha. That the Lord, when he incarnates, he has 2 purposes. One is to to establish the dharma. That is the external thing. But the real purpose is God comes down. He is ever blissful. To enjoy his own bliss, he comes down to enact the divine play among the devotees. To enjoy his own bliss. The one who is ever blissful, to enjoy his bliss, comes down to relate to the devotees. That is the real purpose. So this is called bhava, bhavayacha. And kshema is a protection. For protecting the dharma, he comes down. So these are the 2 aspects of the divine play. So Shaunaka is asking for the elaboration of the Krishna's life, which not only deals with this mere killing of the demons, it also speaks of the bliss which a devotee enjoys in his association. That will be depicted in the Bhagavatam. In Bhagavad Gita, we find that dharma has been established. But that intense divine absorption, which we find in the Bhagavatam, in the Gopi Leela, that was the antaranga, there's the internal reason for the gods coming down. So that has to be described by Ugrasravasa to all the rishis. And that's what they're requesting for. So that's how we find the Bhagavatam gradually. Every scripture has a lineage, parampara, that unless we know the parampara, we can never have respect for it. If you just say any scientific theory, you may doubt it. The moment you say such and such scientist, it is he who has propounded, then immediately you have a faith on that. So here also Bhagavatam, before starting the story, they're speaking of the lineage. It is not some imaginary story. It's all these great spiritually illumined souls who have studied it, contemplated on it, their life was transformed, and with a transformed life, they came again, that the same words now came as mantra. And that was again heard by the next generation. And that's how generation after generation, that knowledge has been transmitted. So this knowledge is something which is actually permeated with spirituality. It is throbbing, it is something, a throbbing, living existence. It is not mere academic knowledge. To establish us in that fact, it is speaking of the lineage. So that's how it is through, from the Parikshits, in the Parikshits assembly of Paramahansas, it is the Shukadeva who, after hearing from Vyasa, has propounded the Bhagavatam, which was heard by Ugrasravasa. Again, he's coming down to speak it out to again the assembly of monks, where Shaunaka is present among with the other monks for the sacrifice. And that's how gradually it is being transmitted. And after saying this, the main episode of the Bhagavatam is going to start. So we will take up a few slokas of this initial stage even in the next class, because it has some spiritual intonation before we enter into the various episodes of the Bhagavatam. With this, we conclude our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskars.